Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited. This is my debut show, so thank you again for joining and welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, the place where you can discover your own truth. Please join us every week on Thursdays from 5 to 7 here, of course, at the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Today, we're so excited because you all know who she is. Her name is Michelle Desrochers, and we're going to be talking about, of course, we have Spooky Month, so we're going to be talking about scariest haunted locations, where and why. Now, Michelle, I'm going to bring you on board. We know you don't need an intro, but welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so thrilled and honored to be able to speak with you today about this topic. It's just, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very honored. I told you I'm a fangirl of yours.
And thank you.
I've been watching you on TV for such a long time, and you just have a personality that is so believable too. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really don't run around screaming demon, though. I like to really make it up there. It's tough because I'm real logical as a researcher and as an individual. But of course, you know, out of all the answers I could possibly give, everybody wants the big D word just because it's the money word. So it's just like, all right, hello. So anyway, I'm glad you enjoy it, and I'm very humbled because it's, you know, it's created a really nice fan base that has followed me into radio.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, everyone knows you. You're an international public figure who's actively researched the unexplained and the strange weirdness, high strangeness, whatever it's called. But just in case for folks, especially folks that are listeners of Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, tell us what triggered your interest in this. You spent decades in the field doing incredible research and having incredible experiences. Do you want to talk about that attachment you had when you were 12? And like, was that the beginning of this for you? Give us a little background.
Yeah, you know, I've been around, I guess, dead people most of my life because I was, you know, really, I'm an intuitive kid, like most kids are. And we have mediumship that goes back generations in both sides of my family, I found out, but especially in my mother's side. So it was always nurtured in me. I wasn't made to feel silly if I said, look, an imaginary friend, or there's somebody here, or, you know, it was never uncommon to go to my grandparents, for example, and see deceased family members or be told stories of activity that's gone on for all these years. So they would just show me pictures. Who did you see? Oh, this guy right over here. Oh, well, that's so and so. So it was a very comfortable situation. But you know, sometimes things kind of take a turn because you are very open to it, and going through puberty, that magical age where it's like, I'm here, and all of a sudden, you know, you catch something's attention, which is normal for you know, kids going through puberty. So something did at some point come in, and I did have a relative that spent a lot of time, you know, they didn't really have anybody in their life, so they spent a lot of time around my parents, and there was only a 10-year difference between myself and this individual. I think she just might have brought something in, and at that point there it was, not quite sure, you know, where it came from, taking a guess here, but I'm looking at timelines, and that's when things changed, and things really wreaked havoc within the household. And I remember clearly up until the age of 18 still having issues. You know, you're hanging with your friends, and I'd come in late in the evening, and I always felt something at my back because, of course, my room, I was that independent teacher, you know, teenagers, I want my room in the basement. Duh.
Of
Did
course.
not yeah. Yeah, okay. So I got the basement room, and it was a big room. Did and but I always had company. So it took a long time. There was a lot of different things that would happen. I remember at one point having a friend over. She was just over visiting, spending the night, and watching horror movies all night. And all of a sudden, because back in the day, I mean, albums have made a comeback, but back in the day, it's pretty much what it was. And all of these albums started flying out of the sleeves because I kept my sleeves outward so I didn't have to damage the album. I would just slip in and I knew where everything was. And they just started flinging out. And so, whatever was there did not appreciate company at all. And then, I was dating, so I'd have like a boyfriend over and he'd just be hanging out listening to albums. I remember going upstairs at one point. I was just going to get, some like soft drinks and snacky bits just to listen to music and spend some time. And all of a sudden, like he comes out of the room and he was panicked. Something put its hand on his back and pushed him up the stairs. And he like face planted the landing. Oh yeah, he was like really terrified. So when we got back downstairs, we had the album playing, and all of a sudden the arm and the needle stopped, lifted up, and went back over perfectly onto another song. And I mean, perfectly. So I got used to things like that. Cold spots, a breeze just kind of going through the bedroom. I really got used to that. So anyway, it was just through trial and error, trying to figure out how to deal with this myself because I had two younger sisters and I didn't want to, everybody was being affected. And back then, it's not like I'm really aging myself, but it's not like there was no internet. It's not like I could call somebody and say, hey, got something going on here. It's not like it is today. So I went to the public library, and the closest I could come up with was witchcraft and herbs and learning how to smudge and different things like ghost gardens, believe it or not, was a thing. So planting certain herbs and flowers around yourself would be something to deter spirits and some negative entities. But I learned through all of it that it was my mindset over and above everything, and through all the people that I have worked with and helped over the decades. I have educated them because I had to educate myself. And I believe in empowering people and teaching them how to keep their space clear so it never happens again. This could be anywhere from grounding and flipping that warrior switch on is what I like to say. Just you are in control. Don't go challenging, but you are more in control than you think, because that's what did it for me. It got to a point where, I remember coming home one night and I closed the door really quick and you hear a big boom on the other side of the door. And I would just turn around and say, that's it. I've had it. And all of a sudden everything stopped. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm assertive. I'm not challenging. And I had a quiet night. But what I come to learn since through research and being more seasoned and is how different fields blend. Extraterrestrial experiencers often have these paranormal experiences, and everything seemed to come to play when I started doing research, and I started realizing 50% of the people I was helping, and 50% is quite a bit if you think, because I've worked with, I can't even count how many people I've worked with over the years. Half of those people had ET experiences as well. They were reporting seeing grays. They were reporting a lot of the same characteristics. For example, let's say foul smells. Everybody's like, demon. It's also affiliated with abduction. Like, I don't even like the term abduction, but it does exist. It's just a thing, coming into the boudoir and, and smelling the smell of sulfur and a lot of things, sleep paralysis. We have a term for that in the paranormal. It's like, well, it's like the hag syndrome, something sitting on your chest. However, there are logical reasons for it, but there are also extraterrestrial reasons for it, or theories. I started talking to my parents and doing the radio show. As you know, you meet all these people from all walks of life, and I interview a lot of people who are experiencers and professional people, everyday people. And I started realizing and hearing their stories, I'm like, wait a minute, that's me. That was me. Then I started thinking back. My grandfather used to have a telescope and he used to watch the skies all the time. We used to see UFOs all the time up north, all the time, clear skies. We didn't live in a really big city. We lived in a beautiful community right on the lake, surrounded by mountains. My God, we would see all kinds of UFOs.
Mhm.
And I remember it, watching one night come down, took about 15, 20 minutes, just went down behind the mountain. I'm just like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was just getting in. I just sat on the hood of the car and watched it. And I probably within a few minutes later, I don't know, 15, it's hard for me I can't think that far back. I'm getting old. But anyway, all of a sudden it just shot up like a bullet, took off. The next morning we woke up to military helicopters just swarming the valley. So I think back to all of this now and the timelines of everything. And before my mom passed, I said, I need to know if you've had any experiences like this. And she goes, oh, yes. I mean, we've had it going back into generations, people talking about seeing things, but she goes, abduction? She goes, I don't know. Like we've never really, you don't really think about it. Like I can't think that far back.
Mhm.
But she said something very interesting. She said, well, your sister, who I'm not going to just name off on international radio, but says was supposed to be a twin. And there was no twin.
Oh, wow.
After a while, like upon birth, it was sort of like somewhere along the line. And she's just like, I said, well, there are explanations for that. She goes, yep. And they were ruled out. So left that alone. So I started mixing everything in together now. So I tend to wonder with some of this activity, because we are very powerful beings. We can psychokinesis the heck out of all kinds of things, telekinesis, and I think right under certain levels of stress or what just going through things, energy changes, very possible. But I tend to wonder how much of it was actually from an experiencer standpoint, because when that came up and started ringing a bell, then it all started up for me again.
Let me ask you this. Do you think because I've spoken to so many other people as well, and they tend to think it's like a dimensional thing, the connectedness between all this high strangeness, say. What do you think it is? Do you think it's like a dimensional shift or a merging of dimensions?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a crossover. I think it's all of the above, really. You go back to ancient times, the ancients would build near power spots and water flow, things like that, real conductors of energy. And they had all kinds of interaction with different beings. And these power spots often ended up being type of portals that would come through. That's why you would build over top of them. And it's why, the church, for example, they would come into an area, take it over, and right over that power spot. There's a lot of ancient knowledge there. I think we are more suppressed in this time in place. Therefore, those places still exist, but they're all under some kind of control of the powers that be, or they're just hidden off in plain sight. You can create portals. I mean, we do it all the time. Sometimes you don't even realize you're opening up like a portal. But I always say it's like listening to a radio station. You can only listen to one at a time. It doesn't mean there are not different layers within your time or within your space. And with that being said, I do believe a lot of them come through portals.
Yeah.
And right? I mean, our last house, things used to come through all the time. And we're like, how? But we could sometimes hear something over the house. It was a big tower. It was a big Gothic revival manner. It was just massive. And we would know. But then there was this one time, Caroline, where I was laying down. I wasn't quite asleep. And this is before I was actually, let's say, having more recollections and becoming comfortable with it again. And I
Mhm.
felt hands come up through the back of my head,
Oh,
touching from behind. There's a wall behind me. And yet, right there on the back of my head, I could feel hands. I may have said something like, touch me and I'll break your arm.
that's
It,
good.
it caught me off guard. It's like, oh no, no, no. And that was into that. And it was very respectful because the hands came off right away. Through time, I was kind of like, okay, at least wait till I'm asleep because you are freaking me out.
Yeah.
Then downloads started happening, things like that. And then crazy things started happening in the house that we knew wasn't paranormal because the house was haunted. And not by grounded spirits, because we can move spirits on. So we knew the spirits who came in visitation. We knew the behavior. We knew the sounds that the house made. Just being an old house, we knew a lot of that stuff. And I was one night where I was just laying down. I was just getting ready to go to bed. So I'm just sort of just nestling in, and the house is high up, so there was a street light from just across the way that sort of shone through the curtains. It was so high up, I would often just, open the curtains and leave the shears because nobody could see you. And across from that was a river. So it was fine. And I look, and there is a gray, probably about, I don't know, 4 feet. It's just
Wow.
looking at me and close enough that I could touch it. And I looked at it and I just went, nope. And I rolled over. I said, nope. No.
Good plan.
Yeah, no, no. And when I look back over, he or she was gone. Like it was respectful. It was really respectful. So because of that, I started to embrace it more. And then I started really researching it and realizing the crossover between the paranormal and
Mhm.
my ET experiences.
Mhm.
And I became comfortable with it, welcomed it, and started having incredible experiences, amazing downloads,
Wow.
visions,
Yeah.
things like that. So,
I noticed today a lot of folks that have been taken don't like to use the word abducted.
mm.
It seems to be a transition in that verbiage. Have you ever experienced being taken that you can remember? Has that ever happened to you?
I've had missing time, things like that, very, very minimally. I've had, I think one NDE when I was quite young, and I don't know, I've always had mediums say you've had two, but I've always thought the second one could have been because something kept asking me, are you
Mhm.
done now? Do you want to go? And I had babies pretty much.
Oh,
I'm like, no.
yeah, yeah.
Like my head felt like it was being pickaxed open. I'm like, I don't care. I will take it as long as I have to. And after saying no, literally 3 times, then everything stopped. All the pain went away. Everything was gone. It was just, don't ask me how, because it was about 4 to 5 days of the most intense pain. It took my vision. My vision was very blurred. At one point, I couldn't see at all. Like something had set in behind my head, and it was very hard to hear. It was the craziest thing. And the doctor actually came to the house. He goes, I've never seen anything like this. It took about 2.5 days for the medication to kick in.
Mhm.
So it was pretty bad, and it was like, but it is what it is. I think it definitely opened me up. As far as abductions go, for sure it's happened. Do I have full recollection? No, but I've always said, make sure I'm asleep. Like I come back so exhausted that I'd be just like, oh, where did you have me freaking working all night? Like I really felt like that, but I have been shown, like leaving at one point. I mean, I am literally coming up to this this craft. I'm coming up like under it. At one point, I'm in it. I'm looking outward, and it's like it's almost, I'm thinking like, am I on, what kind of a ship am I on? Because I'm looking out through like a ship portal around one, and I'm looking out at stars. And so I'm just thinking, and all I remember saying is, this is pretty awesome. Like, I'm aware of it. I am aware of all of it. So it's just like, okay, with that being said, that this is really cool. But that's my recollection. So whenever I would go to bed, I'd be just like, oh, I'm tired. Just let me fall asleep first, and I don't care. And I would be asleep like this. Like, it would happen pretty quick.
I think it's so interesting how you set the criteria for yourself with these experiences, and you did that way before anybody really knew how to do that. I mean, nowadays we hear about how to deal with these things from all the paranormal shows that are on TV, but back when you were having this, you set the pace and you put your foot down as to what was going to happen or not, it sounds, right?
Well, with the paranormal part of it, yes. Like what came in, I trained myself, but I lived a long time just sort of under the thumb of something. And I knew it was an entity. I knew it was. I one night, I sat up in bed, and the room just filled with a mist, and I'm going, oh, this is not going to be good. And I knew instinctively, and something just kind of started coming up at the end of the bed, and it was like seeing it from about here upward. It was massive, and I'm just looking at it, and it's just like, and even at that point, as it started to manifest, I just said, no, that's enough. No, I just had enough. I didn't go under my blankets. I just sort of like just hunkered down, and like I was brought up Roman Catholic. It's kind of clutched onto the faith of hang on to the Bible, and just like, I didn't say anything other than that. I just clipped onto it, because at that time my faith was in that little book. Everything went, and I realized, okay, because I wasn't practicing Roman Catholic by any means, but I realized at that point, wait a minute, I put my intention into this, and now I know that everything is about intention. And like people would say to me, well, can I just smudge? I said, well, you think you're going to smudge one time? It's going to do it if you're trying to get rid of something. I used to be backed up like a year and a half, sometimes 2 years, to see people personally. And so I would work with them over the phone at the time or online and say, no, this is what I want you to start doing it. I want you to do this 3 times a day, because you're taking control. It's the intention of the putting behind the act of smudging. Over time, they will dwindle it down to a couple of times, to 1 time, maybe every other day. I did that so I was giving them a task to do. I was putting them in charge of their space. You can utter any words you want. People will say prayer. People will just be firm. I said, but it's the intention and the strength behind the words that you're saying. It is the intention and the strength behind the act, of however you're cleansing. And that's what worked. By the time I was able to go and see people, in some cases, like, no, we're good. Excellent. They're like, no, we followed everything. And when things would amp up, I'd hear from them like 2 years later and say, just want you to know things amped up a bit and we took care of it. And things are quiet for another few years. So I'm just like, I believe so much of it is here, because in helping people, sometimes, I've noticed if people just seem to attract a lot of things. And I also believe that people put out a lot of their own energy. And I would get calls and emails from people like almost like once every few weeks. Something's come back in. You need to come back. I'm just like, I can't do that. I'm one person.
Right.
And I can't fly to the other side of the world. If I'm on the other side of the world, because I am a world traveler, then okay. But that's not my life on an average,
So you have to teach people how to empower themselves and do this for themselves then, obviously.
Yes, I think For me, that's always been key. And also, I think I've always been very open with people. There's
Mhm.
so many groups out there now, and there have been for a lot of years. And I commend anyone who wants to donate time to help people. Absolutely. But not everybody should help people. There are some great researchers who go to haunted locations and they're like, bigger locations. They just want to do it for the research end of it. Because when dealing with people, you know, and this is feedback that I've gotten from people that I have been called in to help. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes people call me and say, "I'm so glad I found you. I've been through all of this hell and back trying to get people." And I'm just like, "Well, what do you mean?" She goes, "I've been made to feel that I should be really, like, fortunate that they're there for me." I'm like, "That's not right. That's not right." I said, like, when I go into a place and how I've done it on an average is just like, "Okay, I'm here. I believe you.
Mhm.
Try to figure out what's going on." But I got seasoned enough to know by what I'm hearing, am I dealing with psychokinesis? Am I dealing
Right.
with some kind of an attachment? Am I just dealing with a human spirit? But I'm just like, just let me take the weight for a little while. You relax. This is what I do. Let me just try to figure it out. And thank you for entrusting yourself and your family to me. The gratitude comes from me. It should not come from them.
That's so nice. You don't hear that.
No, if it has to be, because it's a hard thing. Life can be hard enough for people as it is, you know. I mean, some people work 2 jobs, some people just struggle,
Sure.
some people got kids, soccer, it's busy, you know. Sometimes when these things happen, they don't see it coming because you're just so busy in life. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to get an understanding, especially logical people. Logical people are sitting there going like, what is this? Like, I've not experienced anything here, but my family is seeing all
Right.
kinds of stuff. Usually it's a logical dad going, "Oh, okay, whatever. It's the house
Right.
settling. But the house is settling, knock it all off," right? But meanwhile, things are going crazy. And it's hard for them to get their head around that, let alone having somebody come in, you know, and saying, "Hey, you're lucky we're here. We're going to figure this out."
All right.
But
Right.
sometimes they don't figure it out. Sometimes they go in, they make it worse. They get in there challenging things. Or what people also don't realize is that I don't go in to communicate with things. I don't want to communicate with it. I don't care about it. If it's a human spirit, would you like us to try to move that human spirit on or
Mhm.
negotiate? We've had some people like, "No, we're happy with the human spirit." Okay, well, this guy doesn't like it when you're in this room. He likes it for like 1 hour a day because he used to sit here every day and just look outside or watch the news. And sometimes just by communicating that, everything stops. But when you're dealing with something that may not be as agreeable, like with a
Right.
malevolent human spirit or some kind of an attachment entity, then it's like, I don't want to communicate with it because you're communicating with it. Then they go home. Your researchers go home. Okay, we've got good stuff here. But this family who doesn't want anything to do with it now
Mhm.
has this entity going, "Well, you wanted to talk to me an hour ago."
Yeah.
And the cycle just keeps going. I think you
Mm.
just need to factor in things like that.
Did you have a team with you, Michelle, or did you do these solo most of the time?
Well, I pretty much retired from it. I know, retired from television for the most part. I retired from all of that. I think the pandemic kind of got the world coming
Right.
to a stop, right? So,
Mhm.
so I used to have a team, and I used to work with people who were very gifted mediums, and because I'm the guy everybody tells everything to. So for me, I already know everything. I need that validation from other people. And we've had people who were exorcists who would go in and, there were times where we were doing like 2 or 3 a day.
Wow.
I know. So it just got to be a lot. And I'm tired. So,
I could see where that would wear thin on your soul after a while.
well, because it's not just going to locations. Like I help a lot of people. I still help a lot of people,
Mhm.
even to this day. But it's all done remotely,
Right.
or it's just done like even through computers. Like, tell me, what's going on. A lot of times I can get them through it. and but it's time consuming. It's not like you're not just haunted a few hours out of the day. Something goes on. I used to get calls at sometimes 1 in the morning, people just screaming and panicking on the phone. And you help people. It was a 24/7 thing. I was there all the time.
Oh, I can see how. So you're a world traveler. You've been fortunate enough,
Mhm.
and in your travels, you went to Romania, correct?
Yes.
And you visited. Now, I'll probably butcher it. Hoya Bashu Forest.
The Hoya Baciu Forest. That's right. Very good. Yes.
That's a mouthful. So tell us about your experience there when you visited. Now, of course, we're going to be talking about haunted locations, especially during this wonderful spooky month that we're having. But people claim that as soon as they walk into this forest, that they suffer from, now these are some of the claims, from severe anxiety. They feel like somebody is watching them. Others walk out with scratches, bruises. They have no idea where it came from.
Mhm.
Some people believe that the forest is haunted by peasants who were murdered a long time ago. Obviously, the forest holds a lot of history.
Mm.
There's evidence of settlements there back to Neolithic period. So I think it's back 6,500 BC, Michelle. And I think that makes it the oldest settlement in Romania. That's as far as I delved into it. So please tell us about your experience there.
Okay. Well, I mean, going there, I didn't want to know a whole lot. We spent, probably close to 3 weeks going from one part of Romania to the other. And Hoia Baciu is located pretty much in the Transylvanian region of Cluj-Napoca. It is said to be the world's most haunted forest. It actually means the shepherd's forest. And the reason it was given that is because one day a shepherd from a nearby village entered with his flock and disappeared with all the sheep, never seen again. And it was recognized, of course, as being haunted when a military technician photographed what he claimed was a UFO. Now, when we were there were locals telling us stories of seeing UFOs over top of the mountain, like all the time. But they appeared in the part of the forest, which is this round clearing. There are technically two of those clearings, but the one is the one that everybody gravitates to. So it appeared in 1968. It's said to be Romania's Bermuda Triangle. And what happened after that is there was a little girl who disappeared. She was 5 years old. And 5 years later, she reappeared, still 5 years old, wearing the same clothes with her same little doll, only she didn't look right. It's as though her mind was gone. She was never, ever the same. But the fact that she reappeared is amazing. Like, there are crooked trees everywhere. I mean, it's crazy. And when we were there, we noticed that there was no sound. And when I say that, I mean no birds, no sounds of like crickets,
No.
frogs. There's nothing. There was nothing. The only thing we could hear was this droning sound, almost like a humming in the background. And I came to find out it was actually under a no-fly zone. We could see planes going all the way around, but not over this mountain. So when we got there, it was probably about noon. We decided, we're going to go in. We're going to have a little picnic, and I'm looking at the clearing, and I'm just like, I'm gonna have a nap. That's just me. I'm gonna have a nap. Really, I wanted to do that because I wanted to take it in. So I lay there and I closed my eyes and I just started taking in the energy. And I could feel things just moving around me all over the place. Like, God, this place is crazy. And I mean, it goes back, they figure 16,000 years ago. Like, because I was there with a couple of friends of mine who are part of my team and also very dear friends. And one is Romanian. She's from we were there staying with her family and such, and so she was doing some research while we're up there, and I'm going, I'm feeling it all coming around. Then out of nowhere, comes this guy in this old rickety cart with the big wooden wheels. And I thought to myself, it's not uncommon. There's many parts of Romania. It's almost like time has stood still, and you still see things like this. It's a regular occurrence coming through the circle. So I'm like, okay. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to go up. I just want to poke the man. Just want to see if he's real. So I'm watching him. He looks over, watches me. As he drove through, he went into the clearing, past the clearing into the forest. I pull up, I go in and I watch. He's not there. I went through the forest and we're like, okay, that was weird, but okay. We went earlier just to get a feel of the place, and that was that. So, night starts to set in. And just before that, just before nightfall, one of the girls says, "You know what? I am going to go in and I am going to sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of this thing up here. I'm going to do EVPs, which is capturing electronic voice phenomena, trying to capture sounds and voices. There's 6 ways into the forest, so she goes, "I'm going to start here." I said, "Don't go to that one. Like that corner is really, really active, and just avoid it. Save it for last, whatever." So she went in. By the time she got to that one, she looks over at Melissa and I, and she goes, "I feel very heavy in the chest right now." And we're looking at her and going, "I bet you are." There's this tree, probably about this big around. I'm not talking a monster tree, about this big around, and we could hear it cracking, and it was coming down like this. And we're like, yeah. And it went bam, just like this. So she spins around and she's like, "Oh," you're just about having a stroke. So at that point, we're like, okay, obviously we have company. So, you talk about the anxiety and stuff like that. A lot of people report having, anxiety, some people nausea, some people break out in rashes. The headaches, yeah, we were sort of feeling that a little bit. Burn marks, no scratches. This is all stuff that's typical of the what's going on in and around the forest. Some people get picked up, they get thrown. In fact, a lot of people who used to film there didn't go in by themselves. They went with people from the University of Cluj. They went in and they went in with people. We were actually 3 days behind a very popular Travel Channel show. And he was having a meltdown in the forest. I'm like, "Oh, for Pete's sakes," it's just ridiculous. But you got your theatrics, and everybody reacts differently. I'll leave it. I'll leave it there. But it's had a lot of. It had a lot of. It was known for a lot of things, magnetic anomalies. I have to say, portal. I truly believe that droning sound was a portal. Because it's like a, why would it be under no-fly zone?
Right.
So later that night, it was a night of a supermoon, and everybody used to say, "Oh, we're just going on the night of the supermoon to bring in the full potential of the energy." I'm like, "No, man, I just want to get back out because it's 4 kilometers to the car." It's in the wee hours of the darkness. So the supermoon comes up, lights up the whole circle. It was just like daylight. It was unbelievable. So we had, I don't travel with a lot of equipment. We had just like what's called like a little hack shack, little ghost box sort of thing. And I think like to show you when that was, I had an iPhone 6 and that was high tech.
Oh, shit.
It was the newest thing out there. Okay. A long time ago now. Anyway, and one of the girls had an iPhone 4. Their phones died completely. So we had we had one phone left for recording, which we recorded the spirit box session. And they were coming through speaking in Romanian. And Audie's was Romanian. I said, "Can you speak in English?" And they said, "Da," which is yes. So we were getting Romanian and then English. So that's kind of cool because there's no language barrier, which we thought was very, very fascinating. So at one point we could hear this old-fashioned music, and um, a voice came through and said, something about let's dance, that sort of thing, right? And I thought, okay, that was interesting.
Mhm.
And then a voice came through and went, Vlad the Torturer. And we knew he had been through that area because he was on his way to Hundora, where he was
Mhm.
imprisoned and where he would often, work with the king at the time, and Sigmund, right? So he went there. So we knew he'd been through the area. So I thought, okay, that's very interesting to have that come up in a ghost box session. Vlad the Torturer. It's like, all right. Then the crazy music came in behind. I was like, okay. So all of a sudden something growls.
Oh, I don't like
And
that.
well, it's funny because we actually had this friend of one of the girls, and he's like super skeptical. And they're good to have around because they keep things very grounded. And when the skeptical guy turns around and points and says, "That's not good," and you turn around, like, if he says that's not good, then that's not good.
Right.
But it looked as though we were given the do I believe an entire tree line was coming down? No. But I believe that we were given the illusion that something was walking over this tree line. This is big forest, mature trees, because it started going like this, the trees, like if they were being walked over, the same way you would walk over tall grass. And I'm thinking, I don't believe the forest trees are coming down. We'd be hearing it. There'd be something. But you know what? Stranger things have happened. I learned to stop discounting things. And the logical side said, no, it's got to be an illusion. So the box says, go now, run. I'm like, oh, I don't run, but I don't cut my losses. I think I've just been handed my own rear end here. So I will gracefully make an exit out of the forest and at least say that I did it with style and grace.
That's
On,
right.
on our way out, we could hear, I mean, realistically, it was respect for the spirits who were taking the chance. And they were saying, go now, run, something's coming. And this growling, grrr. And when that first happened, Audie's like, "I'll be quiet. Nobody's talking to you," because that's the kind of thing I say all the time. And then but that's when all of a sudden, go now, run comes in. It's almost like Mama Bear was coming in, you
Mhm.
know. And we're like, this isn't cool. On our way out, there was something on our heels. We could hear it crunching
Oh.
in the leaves behind us, coming through
Mhm.
the trails. And one of the girls took a picture, and it was an orb the size of a basketball right hovering over the trail. I'm funky with orbs. I believe there's a lot of spirit orbs, and I believe they're coming out of a forest. Pollen, dander, moisture, or dust. I mean, I'm logical about this stuff, but it was the only one there. It was so big, and it sat over the trail. And we were at this time outside the forest. We were in full on outside of it, making our way down,
Mhm.
and we make it back to this hotel. This is a gift that kept on giving because it followed us. It had a really long reach.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, something followed us back. And this state of the art hotel, the only way you get power in your room is if you put the card in, you slide it into a slot in the wall, and all the lights come on. So it's not like the electricity like it's high tech. It's not going to just start messing with things. You pull the card out, electricity's dead.
Mhm.
So we get back, and by this point, I'm just glad I have Wi-Fi. I'm like, well, that was fun, because I'm nonchalant about a lot of it. It's like, whatever, right? So I'm trying to catch my signal, catch up. All of a sudden, the phone keeps ringing. It just keeps ringing. Pick it up. There's nobody there. Front desk, right? Like, it's not our phones. This is the hotel phone.
Mhm.
Except, are you seeing that? I'm going, yep. Don't care. So that's kind of how I am. So she's filming all of this. All of a sudden we get a call from the other two who are one or two stories up, and she goes, there's something, the phone's going crazy. There's something walking around in this room. All of a sudden we hear something walking around. We're like, okay, this isn't good. We can see the mountain from where we were, the forest. And I'm just like, this is not good. Anyway, things went quiet. We thought, oh, okay, somebody's just sort of like, you're in my space. I'm showing you I'm in your space.
Mm.
So I'm one of these people that's like, I'm going to bring some soil back. All my friends, bring us back soil from the haunted forest. Okay, why not? Sure. All right. Bring back some soil, some stones. What else? What is anything else? Trees. I brought back like broken tree branches.
Oh, boy.
I still have it all. It's great. But the girls did too. Things just don't seem to react the same with me as they do with other people. I attribute it to mindset. I had zero issues when I got back. The girls within a couple weeks started having issues, getting phone calls, hanging up, like crazy things, electronic stuff.
Yeah.
And people they gave a stone to from the forest started having a lot of issues. See, it just kept going and going and going. 2 years later, some of the exact same stuff started happening, even to the people who got the stone, who didn't have issues before. I don't know.
I've heard of people returning stuff like because they had so many bad experiences that they actually go back and bring back the stones or dirt.
Yes, exactly. I bring back stones and dirt from every place I travel in the world. So I don't have those issues, but people are like, oh, this stuff's happening. I'm like, what, really?
They know better than to mess with you, Michelle.
I don't know. It's either that or I'm just like, I think it's just how I handle it, because at the other house, I mean, I come home from working with a family in a certain case, something would growl at me in the kitchen. And I'd be just like, I ain't time for you right now. And I just keep walking. You're not going to get that reaction from me.
Right.
I remember prepping to go to help another family, and it was apparently really, really bad. And there's a really horrific backstory to it. Somebody died, somebody's sitting in jail right now with no recollection of what happened because probably got jumped into. It was the same thing. It was a pattern that kept happening. And the people who brought me on, the same thing happened with them, only no death, but serious injury. Anyway, they know that the theory that they know before you get there it's a for sure thing. It's a for sure thing, because I was getting ready. I was in my ensuite and I heard 3 knocks on my bedside table. I come out of my ensuite and I just sat there and I went, I just smiled to myself, and I just got out of there and I grabbed my purse. I'll see, as I just said, I'll see you in an hour, mister. I grabbed my purse and I don't know. That's it. And it followed. It was there. It was there when I got there, because we're doing a walkabout and it's all growling at me through the audio and everything else. It's like, acknowledgement is empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. Has anything ever frightened you to a point where you were like, okay, that scared me, I'm done?
I can startle like anyone else. The one thing that threw me off was working a really, really bad location. And you tend to get, it was really early days. It humbled me a lot, this situation, because something followed me back, and it went after my daughter at the time. She lost her vision completely. There was no explanation for it, completely blind. And we took her to specialists, eye doctors. We took her to specialists, had pictures inside of her eyes taken, CAT scan, MRIs, you name it. She had it. And it took my family doctor, who was also a good friend of the family's. And he goes, what have you been working on lately? And I thought about it and I went, oh my gosh.
Wow.
And I acknowledged it. And the family, there were 2 families involved. One family wanted us to go back, and one family did not. They were really suppressed, like a major oppression was happening. And we were supposed to go back after the Easter holiday. And they're like, don't come back. We don't want you to come back. So I just tapped in and connected and just said, stay away. All right, no problem. People are like, you sold out, made a deal. I'm like, no, we weren't going back.
Mhm.
You told me to stay away. All right. But the family did not want any further research. They didn't want anything. So, I don't make deals,
Right.
So I was just like, okay, not a problem. We knew we weren't going back anyway. And she came downstairs like the next day. She goes, I can see, like literally, like almost within, I don't know, 12 hours. I can see. Okay.
That's crazy.
It's humbling. It was humbling.
Yeah.
It changed how I did things moving forward because things have followed back. And I have a story that I like to tell is because it was interesting. There was one haunted place that I researched for years. One of
Mhm.
these places, a public place. So, but it was oh God, it had a mix of absolutely everything in there. And you could call at any given time. It was not uncommon to have things come up growling at me. I'd be called every name in the darn book, you know? So it's like, okay, first time something ever came to a phone and called me the C word, I was shocked. And
Oh, wow.
the best I could do was say, you're a potty mouth. That's the best I could do was
That's
potty
funny.
mouth, right? It was hilarious. I was like, oh my God. So anyway, this place, it was just one of these places that kept delivering. But something followed back one time, and I woke up in the middle of the night. It's like spidey senses. I was like, something's not right. So came down the stairs. And I went down into the den, and there was a big
Mhm.
leather recliner there, and I could see the term "darker than dark." It's a thing. It is a thing. As I could see the form, the silhouette of something, and it was breathing, and it was going like this
Ooh,
growling pant. And I sat down on the sofa and I looked at it and it went, "Ah," just like that. And I just stood up and I just said, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I went back upstairs and I could hear a
good.
like that, a big popping sound behind me. And which tells me again, like dimensional, right? Just like that.
Right.
And then I listened halfway up the stairs. I went, okay. And I went back up to bed. I was just like, you know, but if you let it get you, then it gets you. It's
Right.
not that you don't feel the fear. I don't want people to think, "Oh, no," like, I just throw caution to the wind and just get out there and get careless. I don't do that. But I learned a long time ago that from my own experiences that I'm just not giving it to you. I'm just not giving into it. It's not that I don't feel it. It's how I distribute that energy. I'm also like just a bit of a meathead too, because I'm just a highly aggressive individual. So it's like you come at me, I'll hold my ground,
Right.
But that's pretty much that. And I've had incredible experiences all over the world. I'm very, very fortunate. But Hoya Baciu is definitely a place that I will never forget. It holds up to its name, like it really does. It commands respect. And would I ever go back? Yes, of course I would.
I was just going to ask you that. Would you go back there?
Oh, yeah, I'd spend the night this time, though.
Yeah.
I would.
What about other places? You have very famous places that we know about that are haunted, like Eastern State
Mhm.
Penitentiary. Have you ever been there? Or
I've not been there. I've been asked to go. I've been asked to film there as well. I think there's some places that have just been so overdone as well. So
yeah,
I'm always very careful about where I go, and a lot of my experiences have happened in the least, well, I won't say the least
mhm,
expected to be haunted. I've had experiences, all over Romania, Egypt, France. I mean, any place I've been, it's been incredible. But Eastern State Penitentiary is long-standing history of hauntings, and
mhm,
you think about it, it's had so many researchers, and you have to think about why a place is haunted. I used to do kids programs for large like libraries and things like that,
mhm.
and always try to been asked to do it in a way that wouldn't frighten them. So I always approached it from a historical standpoint, because everybody goes, why would that place be haunted? Well, think about it. Let's break it down. Eastern State Penitentiary, okay? It is a prison. So you have people who would get put into prisons who were crazy, just like you're insane, you're deemed insane. You're
Yep.
being put into a situation here that is essentially um it's dangerous. You are with convicts, you are with rapists, you are not in a very good situation. Okay. Do you think that mindset changes, or that of maybe a murderer? Sometimes in your harsh conditions, that mindset doesn't change just because you lose the physical body. That means you get to take it into the afterlife. If you're stuck, it's your essence that makes you the
Right.
person. It's not going to change, you know? But a lot of people feel sadness there and oppression, which makes complete sense. You have that type of energy and those kind of people, it's going to attract something maybe a bit more malevolent to come in and feed off of that energy. Um, Death row seems to be the most active spot there. And I mean, and then the prisons had people like Al Capone, William Sutton, Slick Willie,
Yeah.
who was like an American bank robber. They were inmates there. So you're gonna have a lot of hardcore people, and you don't need hardcore people, but these are pretty hardcore people. You get punishment such as icy cold bathwater poured on you.
Mhm.
Sometimes, like in the winter, you're dunked in water, hung on a wall until ice crystals would form. They had the mad chair, which you were bound so tightly to the chair that would cut off circulations, and they
Yeah.
would leave inmates, sitting there in their cells for like 23 hours a day in the dark. How functional do you think that makes anybody? That's not going to
Right.
make anybody functional. But
Yeah.
that's
They
what you're
had some
getting.
stuff going on there, putting them in the pit and isolation. And so, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, they have tours too, which I really have no desire to go on one of those, but people love it.
Mhm. Yeah, they do. I think tours are an opportunity, thanks to paranormal television, which has an influx of interest because people, and you even have your sofa investigators, because maybe they don't have anybody in their community to go out with, so they live through a lot of these programs because they get to experience these new locations every week and new techniques of researching, and don't be going in there. There's something in there, and it's fascinating because some of these places will have chat rooms, like they'll connect up to like at the time Twitter, and people would just be putting in things. We see this, we see this. It was a phenomenal interaction. But what it's done is it's created this whole influx of interest, and people want to go and have their own experience. And they love that fear factor. So
Yep.
places that offer ghost tours or ghostly events such as Eastern State Pension and maybe Waverly. I mean, they
Yeah.
happen all over the place. It's a place where people of like minds can connect, where I say safely in an environment. Not that the environment is safe because you don't know what's going to come out at you, but you're
Right.
going in knowing that. I know when I used to do a lot of tours, we used to do a lot of ghost walks, but I also used to be a paranormal representative for a very large castle up here in Canada. I'm not just going to blurb it out because they don't promote that sort of thing right now under new management. But I was their paranormal representative. So when people come in, they would be told the history of the location. We would talk about some of the haunting experiences, and I would teach them how to properly do voice recordings, how to properly communicate with spirits,
Mhm.
and I would teach them how to protect themselves, which you have to do because some people go in there totally throwing caution to the wind. And then you get that one guy who just doesn't believe. And sometimes they love to make believers out of
Yes,
non-believers. So,
definitely.
right? I remember having a tour and a woman dragged her husband along. It's always a woman dragging the husband along most of the time. And we were in this one part of the cemetery we went there because it was very historically active, and the city had given us permission. Always get permission from the city. Always,
Oh,
always, wherever you're at, always get permission. So we went in there, and this woman comes up to me. She goes, "I haven't seen my husband in about 20 minutes," and she was afraid to go back by herself. So I come to the back, and I see this man standing there with his arm out. I'm like, "This is a straight." I'm going, "All right." He's like, he's like, "Something has my hand."
oh, jeez.
So I'm like, "Ah." I said, "How do you feel about that?" He goes, "Not very good." It's like, okay. Says, "Why don't you just pull it back?" He goes, "It's these icy little fingers." He was a child ghost who used to like going around holding hands. So I just looked at him. I said, "Just pull it away." He goes, "I can do that." I said, "Yes, you can." The wife's like, "You should have just let him stand there for another hour."
That's funny.
The wife was having a great time with it. I felt for the guy. I'm just like, oh man. But they gravitate to the skeptics for some reason. Have you ever
Absolutely.
noticed
Absolutely. And some of it's funny and it's good. It makes for good TV. So they really do.
it makes for good TV. That's it. The guy was a good sport. He's just like, I came here a non-believer, and I'm leaving here closer to being a believer.
Wow, that's good.
That's
That's
all you can ask for. I said, "You were a good sport." He goes, "I was terrified." I says, "She was 5 years old." He goes, "I don't care." It's the most terrifying 5-year-old I've ever met.
that's funny. What
Yeah.
about the Monte Cristo homestead in New South Wales, Australia? That's supposed to be regarded as one of the most haunted locations in Australia. Have you heard anything? There was supposed to be tragedies there built in 1885, I believe. Anything about that, Michelle? Or
I
I think
actually included that in a show that I did. Joe, our station owner, and I had a show for God about 3 years called The Gray Zone Uncensored. And
Mhm.
we would often speak about haunted locations. And this one, along with another one we're going to talk about tonight, being the Tower of London, with phenomenal stories, by the way, we included these locations because they were so active.
Mhm.
So it was during one of our Halloween specials. So I found I had a lot of information. So I'm just putting up some notes because there's so much I just want to touch on as
All
much
right.
as possible. It's an incredible place. It's said to be Australia's most haunted house. It was constructed between 1884 1885, perched up high on a hill. And its history is infested with superstitious deaths, ghost sightings, and tragic occurrences.
Mhm.
Original owner was Christopher William Crawley from 1841 to 1910. He died in the homestead on December 14th, 1910, from a combination of heart failure and blood poisoning. The latter was called by a carbuncle on his neck.
Mhm.
It got infected, and scratching his collar got infected, and he died. His wife, who could not cope with her husband's death, locked herself inside the house and died, I mean, quite a long time later, August 12th, 1933, from a ruptured appendix.
Oh,
That's pretty horrific. That's not fun. So let's talk about the spirits. Of course, we
mm,
have the original owners. They're believed to be roughly 10 spirits who are here. And the original owners hated animals. They hated animals. So they still hate them. Remember, we talked about that essence. If you hated them then, you hate them now.
right.
Same idea. And the people who live there now, the new owners, they had chickens, they had kittens. The chickens were all found strangled to death. The
Oh,
parrot was choked to death. The litter of kittens basically were all brutally killed.
ooh.
I know. So Mr. Crowley haunts the room to which he died, and his spirit, of course, he's still kind. He's a kinder spirit. His
Mhm.
wife, not so much. She ruled the house with an iron fist and basically dared anyone to enter her house, and still does. If she doesn't like you, she will scare you. Literally, she will go out of her way to scare you, and it'll feel like like ice water. like
Mm.
literally on your skin. There's also a mentally disabled boy who was kept hidden in the homestead's cottage for many years. There's a spirit of a maid who committed suicide by jumping from one of the balconies. And of course, Mr. Crawley got two of his maids pregnant.
Right. I
So,
didn't hear about
right,
that.
not uncommon for the times. The
Right.
one actually hit the stairs and was killed instantly. So I guess when she jumped, and her ghost still haunts the veranda, and the ghostly bloodstain marks the spot where she died. Now, the second one, pregnant maid, gave birth to a son. She named him Harold. And when Harold was a young boy, he was involved in a terrible accident on the premises and he was hit by a coach. So the child survived the accident, sustained head trauma, which disabled him for life. He was
Mm.
kept in chains in the coach room. Like, how horrific was that? And when he died in an asylum, so not even on the grounds, he returned to the ground, which is after his death, and people hear the sounds of chains. So the coach house is haunted by this young man and a young stable boy named Morris. So he basically wasn't feeling very well one day, this Morris boy, and the master did not approve of the fact that the boy slept in. So to teach him a lesson, he basically set the boy's mattress on fire. And those screams are still heard to this day. And then there's another boy who died falling down the stairs. So there's a whole lot. I mean, for one location,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of stuff there. A whole lot.
So tragic.
It is very tragic. But sometimes you're getting to the history. Like, can we do the Tower of London next?
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Tower of London was built by my ancestor, William the Conqueror,
Oh,
who never actually stepped foot in England, by the way. The
no.
French king who had an English throne. My grandfather used to tell the stories about that. He goes, our ancestor was the only king, he was the only French king ever to rule England. And it was just something that we kind of went on about for ages. I'm just like, this crazy stuff. But it is an amazing, amazing place. So it was built by William the Conqueror in 1078, 12 years after he conquered the area in the Norman Conquest of 1066. It was expanded on by future kings in the 12th and 13th centuries, still contains the crown jewels of the monarchy. It has an estimated 400 people who were tortured and executed here. In 1483, two young princes were infamously murdered in the tower, right? Richard. That was King Richard, who they found in the parking lot. That Richard buried down there. Yeah, that same guy. Anyway, the murder was unsolved to this very day, and they did end up finding the boys, and they knew. After now, we know what's unsolved, but at this time, they did not know. So basically, shadowy figures are seen holding hands. They believe this are the young man, and they drift from room to room and they melt into the walls. Catherine Howard, the wife of Henry VIII, is said to be here. Anne Boleyn, who is the most active spirit over there, also the wife of Henry VIII, was imprisoned and beheaded there in 1536. She has often been spotted on many different areas of the tower with her headless torso, just paces around, frequently spotted in the chapel of St. Peter, where she was buried. Here's the story that I love the most. In 1873, a soldier who was on duty was hearing commotion in the chapel. And he's like, what's going on? He pressed his face into the glass and saw a procession of ghostly lords and ladies, knights in armor, and Anne Boleyn walking through this procession.
Wow. Now, I have a question about your ancestry, but before I get to that, I just want to say thank you to the folks for joining us today, for tuning in. You're listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, the place where you can discover your own truth. Of course, we are live on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. So I just wanted to put a thank you out there. Now, Michelle, your ancestry intrigues me. So you are related, right? What else can you tell us about your ancestry? Like, I'm sure
boy.
whole genetic study on your family history?
Long before ancestry, the ancestry places. Hey, Howie. Um, Before all of these DNA places started coming out, my grandfather, who's been gone for probably about 35 years now, 40 years, did our family tree, and my uncle took over. Now, for one side of the family, he did all of that for it, very minimal on my grandmother's side. Um, and of course, I dealt with a genealogy lab long before they
Mhm.
became popular. So I was able to validate a lot of that. And what we did find was that my grandparents, their lines crossed a couple of times at least throughout history. So my grandmother's side was, William the Conqueror, and my grandmother's side
Wow.
in Portugal, we had Knights Templars. My grandfather's side was just sat on, I mean, a couple of different lines of knights. One was in the private guard, whose name is on a monument in England for William the Conqueror, who was my grandmother's ancestor. So that was
Wow.
crossing there.
Mhm.
And then we had another ancestor who was up. They all came from Alsace-Lorraine, which was the Templar town in northern France. And he basically, when I guess the prince, I can't remember which prince it was. It's all written down in the books because our family actually wrote a book about our history. And he essentially gifted the prince and the new princess 100
Mhm.
acres of land to build a castle. And
Oh,
his wife was part of the court, of the French court. So there was a whole lot of different stuff. But it's why Templars are so also very near and dear to me, because we have them throughout the family lines, going back into um, you know, Portugal on my grandmother's side, because I think it was her great great grandfather, whichever one. Anyway, it all eludes me. But he was a grandmaster and owned a large fleet of ships. And I believe it was his daughter who was very well revered, and
mhm.
in Columbus, and somehow, and I don't know, it just moved around. Nobody's proud of Columbus, just saying. So we don't say it very often. But anyway, he's in the woodpile somewhere. But it's very, very vast on both sides. And what got me on the path of researching my family lines, which validated a lot of the journey that we've been on, and a lot of the stuff that my uncle, his oldest son, found after my grandfather's passing. He
Mhm.
finished it, but because my grandfather came through and he started communicating and saying this, and this. Like, he gave us all this information, and I'd be sitting there going, this was all through medium friends of mine and stuff. And of course, like, what does he want? And they were saying, you have to do this, and this, and you have to go here, 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 and here. He would leave stuff on my PVR, and I'm just like, did he leave that on my PVR? She goes, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was crazy. So, I would just look at my uncle and say, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, I found all that.
Do you have a
Oh.
lot of interesting, like, Knights Templar stories? Oh, I'll bet.
Oh, there's all kinds of Knights Templar stories that go on. In fact, I mean, you ever want to interview somebody of real interest, you have to interview my friend Hamilton White, who
Oh,
owns who
yeah.
owns the Tamar Horde, which is a horde of Knights Templar artifacts that took 10 years to put together, that came out of Portugal. It was a cache of stuff
Mm.
hidden during the Inquisition of that time, and it's invaluable. It's night, but never before seen Knights Templar artifacts. And anybody knows, a lot of stuff about Knights Templar. I know a lot
Yeah.
of people who know stuff about Knights Templar, you know.
So
So it's all very, very intriguing. It's all fascinating stuff, but it's interesting, the dead have a way of speaking, and my family was always very, very open in the afterlife and coming through and communicating. But like I said, I grew up with stories about, nope, nope, your ancestor was the only French king ever to rule England and never step foot in it. Okay. Nothing to me then, I'm like 14 going, that's cool. But when he passed away, I wish I had listened more to the stories.
Yeah, intriguing.
Mhm.
Um, any other locations that you visited that are close to your heart in terms of hauntings? I mean, we also have places in England like the Ancient Ram Inn. Have you ever been there?
I've not. I've not been in. I have researched it. It's not a part of England that I visited, but this is one of those places that's so very high profile. I mean, a lot of the shows have done it because it is crazy active.
Yes.
And it's been featured. I mean, Most Haunted was probably the one show that really, really brought it to the world. And there's so many others besides that. The Black
Right.
Monk House.
That's
The
another
owner of the Black Monk House came on our show a couple times. It's crazy the stuff that he was telling us. It's nuts. But anyway, but getting back to the owner of the house, John Humphreys, who's passed away. He purchased it in the 60s, died in 2017. He is the current owner is his daughter Caroline. Now he claimed to have experiences literally from the very first night. In fact, the family would not even stay on the
right.
premises. He said, well, these were demonic forces that were grabbing him and dragging
Right.
him across the room. And he had uncovered evidence of ritual sacrifices and devil worship, found a lot of skeletal remains of children on the site, which he believed had been stabbed with daggers. But the one that was the most aggressive thing over there was the poltergeist. And people who stayed there, and a lot of researchers as well, had claimed that they fell victim to the poltergeist, being yanked out of bed, tossed around.
Awesome.
And place was built in 1145. What do you want? It's said to be the most haunted place in the Isle of I believe it's the Isle of Wight that it's located. So I mean, you did factor all of that in. Again,
Yeah.
we're
That
getting
place
into
gives me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. Like
yeah.
when I saw it on TV, it just didn't have good vibes for me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, something that goes back that far, and I don't
Yeah.
know what is it about a location, while we're on the whole sacrificial stuff. When we were in Romania, Castle Cornovis, which is known as Hunyad Castle, but it's Castle Cornovis. We found out that someone who worked there had let people come in to do sacrificial stuff. And where the chapel was, they used to just light all these candles around there, and they were
Mm.
doing ceremonies in there.
Yeah.
Whatever happened, it brought in these dark things. And I think the objective, and which is sad to me, the objective is always to try to get into the Vlad Tepes, Dracula. They're
Mm.
trying to bring forth this man. And because hey, he was a revered ruler. He impaled everybody, so he's just this is a guy we want. And I think what starts out as that also brings a lot of dark energy in. And according to people who have researched it, and according to staff members who have been interviewed on it, because you can actually rent this place for investigation. Same with Brandcastle. And this is stuff that was coming out that the energy seemed to turn. So when you're looking at a place like the Ancient Ram Inn, and this is some of the things that have been happening, how long had it been happening, and why? Was it
Right.
always dark?
Well, like you said, depending on the ground itself,
Mhm,
and a lot of people build too on ground, ancient,
mhm,
ritual sites, and they don't know, and things happen after that, right? I mean,
mhm.
be careful what real estate you choose.
No, it's true. It's true. You have to be very, very careful because there's some places that are quite benign. I have a
Right.
friend who lives in England, and they're over top of an old Roman cemetery. It's 30 feet from an old Roman road out in England.
Yeah.
It's just like, and he goes, we don't have all those problems. He goes, house is haunted. Don't get me wrong. He said, but we don't have all those problems. So
Yeah.
what triggers people. It's
Right.
just like, why do people all run to cemeteries? What is it about a cemetery that makes people want to get in there and do really silly things? Why do people always assume first off that cemeteries are haunted? If you died, why would you hang around your body? I mean,
Exactly.
you could go anywhere you want. Now, again, don't get me wrong. If you don't realize you're dead, you might want to hang around the body. It's not unheard of that spirits actually try to get back in, but most spirits have an understanding of the body's in the ground, something's going on. Why am I here? I'm going to go back to places I had fonder memories of, maybe see my family. Why do we feel drawn to visit a body?
Well, do you think when folks go to cemeteries that there's not the dead there, but they're summoning these spirits there? Like, why the cemetery? That's such a great question.
Hmm. I feel that there are things out there that prey on people who grieve, is what I think. I believe a spirit, you could talk to your loved ones anywhere. You don't have to be going to a cemetery. I think it's just a symbolism. You feel
Yeah.
like you're sitting with that person. It's the last bit of the physical of their life that we have to hold on to, right? So a lot of people will gravitate. But in doing so, and I've seen this in people who have helped, who have been grieving. So if you're grieving, you really want a message from your loved one. Some people will do anything to get that one
Right.
last message. Like, let me know you're there. Let me know you're okay. There are things that are out there that will give you that experience and they will mimic that individual. And I remember one time a woman messaging me and she says, I need you to come over. Thankfully, she was in the same city. And I said, okay, why? She was, my husband died. Something's wrong. I'm like, okay. So I went over. I found out after the fact that she had been doing a lot of voice recordings. She was trying to communicate. She was heavily grieving.
Oh,
So a message was left on her answering machine. It was this growling. He was name calling her, everything. She was, I need you to know if that's my husband. I'm like, I don't know. Does your husband like you? Like, this is really harsh stuff, And she looked at me. I said, I don't mean to sound like nonchalant about this, but I mean, do you not know your husband? Is this how he spoke to you in life? She says, no. I'm like, okay, you have a much bigger problem because you won't stop communicating. And there's something out there that has come in, giving you all the signs that you want. And now it's taking over because you are in a state of grief that you can't pull yourself out of. It took her like that. That was a couple of years of working. When I say working with some families, it's not just like a snap of a finger or waving a wand. Sometimes you were working with people. Like I think the longest term I've ever had was almost 3 years working with one family.
wow.
Just bringing them out of it. Just they finally did. They came out of it. It was just like, no, we're in charge. It's just the fear took hold and they could not, because you could get rid of one thing and something else will come right back in. If you're leaving a foot in the door, right?
Yeah.
So cemeteries do that. I think you go, you grieve, you just wish for something, you're hurting, and there are just things that feed off of that.
This is why after my husband passed away, I partook in none of that stuff.
Right. Well, that's kind of a good idea. But you could talk, you could just speak with
I
him
do.
telepathically. You could teach,
Yes.
like, right? You just
Oh, I
don't
talk
really,
to him every day,
yeah.
but I don't ask him to respond either. So,
Right.
I'm good enough just talking it out.
But your dog would be the dead giveaway. It's the first thing I say to people is when something is going on. And I said, do you have a dog or cat? Cats are said to be protectors. I mean, the ancient Egyptians believed it. But I said, follow their lead. If there's something that doesn't belong there, and you've got something just staring up at the ceiling or barking aggressively because he's trying to protect you, that something isn't right within your space with energy. And here's something else that people don't even think about. If your animal is acting erratically and you feel that there's something going on, and maybe your dog, for instance, may be more aggressive than normal, it may not just be, if he shows aggression towards you, you might want to consider the fact that they are still a sentient being. They're still a physical being that something can attach to. And because
Sure.
it can't speak for themselves, many
That's
times it goes unnoticed. We've seen pets with attachments.
wow.
It's so sad,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen footage of horses that were demonically possessed, and they ended up dying because of it. So,
No, they do. I mean, they just drain the energy. But
yeah,
I mean, true possession, they say is few and far between. And ultimately, when you're looking at the different stages, death is usually the last stage, whether it's the death of the person who is possessed, or maybe that person has killed somebody else, or maybe both. Like, that's why they say it. Like, it's very rare. But I mean, you look at some faiths and they'll tell you it happens all the time. I think attachments and possessions are very different.
absolutely. Now that it's Halloween time, everybody is into, the whole scary thing.
Mhm.
And I hear a lot of people talking about the veil being thin, and they don't even know what it means, but they just heard it and repeat it.
Right.
Let folks know what that really means, Michelle. What does it mean when the veil is thinner in the
Well,
month of October?
I'm gonna maybe burst some bubbles here because we're Halloween when the veil is thinnest on All Hallows Eve, which means that the dimensions between the living world and the world of the dead sort of become one. So we have more experiences. But however, if you go back into old pagan times, they'll tell you that it's usually around Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's tends to be when the veil is the thinnest. There are cultures all over the world who will actually set places at the table throughout these holidays. I mean, you have to understand it's a holiday for Christians,
Right.
but it's not like that for everybody in the world. And I think the veil can I think it gets thinner more than once a year personally. So they honor the dead. They say that winter solstice, for example, as
Mhm.
they're putting everything to bed, they're burning that fire at Samhain, and they're putting out the old, and they take the fire from that, or a flame from the fire, bring it in, light their hearth to protect themselves because things are moving around. That's not necessarily at Halloween or All Hallows Eve, but I think is it just the whole allure of things? A lot of people don't even celebrate Halloween.
Yeah, and I think
Right.
more and more are not because they see it as a pagan holiday and they don't want to partake in it.
But it's really not. It actually came in with the Irish. And they used to have, when jack-o'-lanterns, they used to just carve out turnips. And they came to this side of the world and said pumpkins work much better. But there are some parts of the world where people are starting to get into it. But I mean, even during Samhain, during the solstice, they would dress up to try to even trick some of the spirits. And I mean, you have to understand when the Christians went in and took over an area, they would incorporate a lot of that into their own holidays, and with the Romans would do the same thing. So a lot of this tradition, stemmed going back a long, long time ago, and it's been changed in some places. Heck, at Christmas, you go back to the time of the Victorians, they went through a spell with no, we want to tell ghost stories at Christmas. You didn't buy a gift; you got them a really funky card which
Right.
was kind of macabre. You would tell ghost stories. You would picnic in the cemeteries. You would get into old seances and do table tipping, and that was around Christmas time. So I don't know. I just think that we incorporate so many different things into our lives without knowing how ancient some of it actually is.
True.
Right? And then I think we need to be careful when you are giving thought to things because you can manifest things as well. That's what tulpas come from. Slender Man, tulpas. We can create things. This tulpas been created. Ancient cultures, Jewish, were very, very notorious for and knowledgeable about creating tulpas and handing them down and so on and so forth to family members upon passing. It's a whole crazy thing. But if you're going out at Halloween and you're going out to haunted places. Maybe you've booked a ghost tour. Maybe you're going to a haunted location. Maybe look into ways of grounding your energy. So it makes it a little bit harder for things to attach to you when you're going back home.
How does one do that, Michelle?
There's a lot of different ways. I mean, I have a grounding technique that I've sent out to clients I've worked with and to our researchers. Do it ourselves. I'm happy to send it. You guys just email me. Go to the website michelledesrochers.com or michelledesrocherscontact@gmail.com, because it's a process.
Right.
I'm happy to email it. There's a belief that you just brush yourself off and you just say you can't follow me. That's it. There's different ways. You just set your intentions. And your intention is, no, you're not following, you're not welcome, right? And if you think something has come back, sometimes spirits are just interested in you. Maybe you're reminded of someone, children who may be looking for their parents, or maybe there's something about you that just, you seem extra, motherly or fatherly, that they just resonate. Just maybe explain when the spirit follows you, like, you shouldn't be here. You're dead. Your mom is waiting for you elsewhere. Don't be afraid. As God-fearing people, we have people always say, why are there more older spirits who are, here? Not as much now. Not that there aren't, I think. But God-fearing people were just like, you obey those 10 commandments. And if you have stepped outside of bounds and you're conditioned to think you're going to hell because you've stepped out of bounds, then a lot of these spirits are going to hang back and say, I'll take my chances and stay here. So, well, then, if you are raised to believe that you have a very loving God, then you shouldn't be fearing things like that. So a lot of it, again, is conditioning and mindset,
Right.
spiritual faith, and saying, your God is all loving. You were taught that you will be forgiven, then ask for forgiveness and move on.
I like that. So you let the individual use whatever they were comfortable being raised with, and that empowers them to protect themselves.
You have to, because if I'm dealing with a Christian and I come in with like a Buddhist faith or something entirely different, they're going to be like, or if I come in with no faith, it's not beyond just mindset. So there are people out there who won't help you unless you're of this faith, and they're helping because they're of this faith. There are people who don't believe in any faith. They just believe in extraterrestrials. There's different mindsets. If you don't work with the background of this person or this family, where do you think they draw their faith from? Don't you think that's important? You have to help them find that faith, or you have to help them realize that draw on your faith. It's what gives you strength. And in having inner strength and positive everything, that is what is going to take you to your road to healing and taking over your own space. You don't have to be nasty about it. You don't have to be challenging. Be firm. It's my space. You're not allowed here. Get lost.
I never thought about that before. That's such an excellent point, to know the person or party of people that you're going to help, know about their beliefs and their convictions, so that you can empower them to protect themselves.
That's right. You're just reinforcing the tools they already have. You say you already have, a faith, a background. Draw on it. Whatever gives you faith, whatever gives you inner strength. If it's the image of your family that's sitting there driving you to want to fix this, then that's the image that keeps you going. Believe me, mind over matter. The dead, I think we have this fear of things we can't see. And of course, it can do things because you can't see it. You can't anticipate it. Not everyone has mediumship. But you take hold of your space. Believe me when I tell you, it's the intention behind the words. It's the power behind the words, the intention behind the act of what you're doing. It makes all the difference in the world.
So instead of running out of the room screaming, it's best to just stand your ground and let whatever it is that's there know that this is your home, your space, and you will have none of it.
If you have the courage to do so, absolutely. Because it's like, if you're going to run around screaming, and if you have something that even, I mean, energy, even a human spirit needs energy, helps it manifest or move
Mhm.
around a little easier, you know. At least that's the theory. If that's the case, and you are like full on frightened and you're letting out all this energy, it was like, oh, I felt good. I'm just gonna, or maybe they just get a charge out of it and get you reacting every time. But it's like if you have an argument, you'll know it. Here's a prime example. Let's say you have an argument with somebody in the house. You leave the room, you come back a couple of hours later, you sit down in that room, the argument's done, it's over, whatever, you worked it out. But then you're feeling really foul. You feel heavy, and you're like, God, you're starting to feel cranky. I'm sorry, for every action, there's a reaction. That energy is trapped there. If you don't get rid of it, it's going to take a while to dissipate. You're going to be affected by that energy. Can you imagine a haunted location that has had centuries or thousands of years, or maybe even a decade or time to sit and fester? Poltergeists do that. That's like self-manifested energy. That's a projection of energy that over time manifests. And now you've got people with fear and anger, people who are researching, and
Yeah,
there's a mix of everything. It
that's a
just keeps
perfect
going.
cocktail. Yeah.
So know your history, know what it's about, and no, it's not all a demon. Just saying. There's a lot of explanation. Thank you, television world. I love you all. Thank you for doing this to me. But yeah, but there's a lot of logical reasons. Be logical, be open-minded is the advice I give you. Try to go with an open mind. We don't have all the answers. If you're lucky, when you get to the other side, you'll start getting some of the answers. You don't know all of the answers here. We're a very small pebble on a very large beach. So,
Gosh, that's so true.
right?
Well,
At the
this
end of
was
the
so awesome. I loved every direction of this conversation.
Thank
Just
you.
so perfect in every way. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Pleasure.
And
Pleasure.
I
Thank you
hope
for
we,
having me.
oh, of course. And I hope we can do this again in the future at some point. I would love to.
Anytime. You know where to find me.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right.
Talk
Good night.
to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I can't express the thanks that I have. Of course, if you have any questions, let us know. Michelle is just an awesome person to be able to have on for my first show. And don't forget to join us every week from Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. Every Thursday, we will be live on United Public Radio Network and the Paranormal Radio Network, and that's 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. So please don't forget, share this show as well. All of it matters to us. All the shows stream on all social media, and each week, listeners will be introduced to featured guests in various television shows from film to radio. Of course, the topics, including ancient history, ufology, paranormal, extraterrestrial theories, conspiracy theories, cryptozoology, and so on. So we look forward to a few laughs along the way and getting to know our listeners a little bit better. We hope that you will join us every week for this amazing journey. Again, I thank you so much. My name is Carolann, and awesome meeting each and every one of you. Thanks, and have a great and safe rest of your day.